I knew birthdays could be messy, but I never expected mine to end with my sister's hands shoving a cake into my face so hard the world snapped sideways. I remember the smear of frosting and the sting of blood mixing into it while Rowan's laughter rang out bright and sharp as I hit the floor. People rushed in only to shrug and tell me it was just a joke. But the next morning at the doctor froze at my x-ray and asked me a question no sister should ever trigger. I grew up learning to swallow things. Small hurts and sharp comments were moments that should have felt wrong but were brushed off as harmless because in my family peace was a performance and I played my part well. I was the quiet one, the steady daughter who didn't need attention because, as Mom liked to say, Avery is strong and she can handle herself. But what she really meant was simpler. Rowan needed the spotlight more. Rowan was born 18 months after me, but you'd think she was the first child, the favorite child, and the son we were all expected to orbit. She had that kind of loud, dramatic presence where Mom lit up the second she walked into a room. When I walked in, Mom acted soft and polite like she just remembered I existed. So I learned early that Rowan's moods dictated the temperature of the entire house, and our mother Marlene did anything to keep her smiling. I fit myself into the cracks and tried not to question the small things, like the way Rowan accidentally bumped me into the coffee table when we were 10 or the way she whispered clumsy after I tripped down the stairs in high school. Mom always reacted the same way, saying, Avery, don't be dramatic, your sister loves you. So I stopped asking for help and focused on work, building a life in my small Seattle apartment to keep my distance. But Rowan had a talent for finding ways to stay in the center of my orbit with little comments and digs that everyone laughed at except me. And that's why on the night of my 36th birthday, even as blood slid warm down my neck, part of me still wondered if maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the pain blooming at the base of my skull was just bad luck. Maybe Rowan's grin wasn't satisfaction but just poor timing. I kept replaying the moment as I drove home with the steering wheel feeling cold beneath my palms. I tried so hard to believe it was just a joke or an accident, just Rowan being Rowan. But lying awake that night with my head pounding, something felt different. An instinct deep in my chest was whispering that this time something was very wrong. And by the next morning when I staggered into the I would learn that instinct wasn't an exaggeration, it was memory trying to surface. By morning the headache had sharpened into something vicious. Each heartbeat felt like a hammer against the back of my skull, and bright light made my vision double. A wave of nausea rolled through me the moment I tried to sit up. I told myself it was fine and all I needed was water and rest. But my own body disagreed, and when I touched the tender spot behind my ear, my fingers came away sticky with dried blood. That was the moment fear crept in, so I dressed slowly, gripping the wall when the room swayed. Driving to the felt reckless, but calling someone felt worse because I could already hear Mom's voice telling me to stop making a scene. She would say, you don't need a doctor, you bruise easily. And Rowan would just laugh, that light dismissive sound that always made me feel smaller than I already did. So I went alone. Seattle's was busy, but when the nurse saw me flinch at the overhead lights, she guided me into an exam room without hesitation. I answered her questions about when and how the injury happened and if there was a loss of consciousness. Each answer felt strangely heavy. Saying out loud that my sister shoved a cake into my face shouldn't have sounded like a medical emergency, yet here I was trembling under a paper gown. Dr. Hanley entered with a gentle knock. His expression was calm but attentive as he asked me to follow his finger and squeeze his hands. I did my best to touch my nose and smile, though the room kept tilting as if it wanted to remind me gravity wasn't on my side. So he said softly, let's get some scans just to be safe. Safe? I wondered when I had stopped feeling that word applied to my family. The imaging room hummed with cold machinery, and lying there staring at the ceiling I kept replaying Rowan's face. I saw her grin and the way her eyes flickered with something sharp and triumphant. For years I had explained that expression away and misread it, but now with my skull throbbing and the world spinning, excuses felt suddenly fragile. When Dr. Hanley returned, he wasn't calm anymore. He pulled a stool close and turned the monitor so I could see, saying, Avery, you have a hairline fracture. It's not severe, but it's real, and it wasn't just from yesterday. My stomach dropped as he clicked to another image showing a rib on my left side with signs of an older fracture. Based on the healing, it happened roughly 3 years ago. 3 years ago was the staircase fall with Rowan behind me, her arms around me afterward, whispering, "You're so dramatic, you just slipped." I felt the edges of the exam table dig into my palms as my breath thinned. Dr. Hanley watched me carefully as though trying to decide how much truth I could handle. Then he exhaled and picked up the phone mounted to the wall. He said the words that shifted my entire world. "I need to report this. It's required." Required as in serious, as in not a joke, and as in not my imagination. When he hung up, his eyes met mine with quiet certainty, and he said, "Avery, someone did this to you." For a long moment I couldn't speak because those words echoed in my head louder than the beeping in the hallway. I had spent years absorbing blame and shrinking myself, convincing my mind that Rowan's presence during every injury was coincidence. Accidents happen and sister's roughhouse, so I told myself I'm just clumsy. But Dr. Hanley's steady eyes left no room for the stories I'd told myself. And then a soft knock came before a woman stepped into the room, introducing herself as Detective Carver. Mom demanded to know what I was telling them, screaming that this was ridiculous and I was just confused because I'd always been sensitive. But for the first time in my life I didn't shrink. I looked her in the eye and said, "Mom, I'm not confused." And before she could argue, my Aunt Elise stepped into the room with tears in her eyes, whispering that she couldn't stay quiet anymore. Elise told the detective she'd seen Rowan shove me down the stairs when we were 12, and she'd heard Rowan on the phone 3 years ago complaining that if I were less competent she'd be the one managing the estate. The detective nodded, like she expected this, and told us they had reviewed the restaurant footage. She said it was deliberate because Rowan checked over her shoulder and even smiled right before pretending to panic. We set up a family meeting for that Sunday to reveal the truth. And when the police walked in to arrest Rowan, she didn't even cry. She just snapped. Her mask fell off and she lunged at me, screaming that I ruined everything the day I was born, and that I was always pathetic. She was shouting that she shouldn't feel guilty for being stronger until the officers finally handcuffed her and dragged her out. Mom stood there, ghost white, finally seeing the monster she had protected for decades. And within weeks Rowan took a plea deal that included a long-term restraining order. I restored the Victorian house and turned it into a center for people recovering from family trauma, because I learned that real loyalty doesn't mean enduring harm, it means protecting yourself. If my story proves anything, it's that the truth doesn't just break things apart, it clears space for something better. So if you've ever had to walk away from family to save yourself, let me know in the comments.